Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to episode number 51 of the White Knuckle Podcast, powered by Ozonics. Hey everybody, welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast. Tonight I have joined with me via the telephone line all the way over in Indiana. As a matter of fact, he hails to us from West Lafayette, Indiana, Mr. Ben Massey, fellow team member of White Knuckle. How's it going tonight, Ben?
I'm doing good, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing well. We had a great conversation earlier today with Lee Lukoski, so you got a hard act to follow. No pressure.
No kidding. No kidding.
So, hey, when I contacted you about coming on the show, obviously everybody has reservations because they're not quite sure of how it's all going to go, but you graciously accepted our invitation. And really what I wanted to do is just to have our listeners get to know all the folks that are new to White Knuckle. And although you're not new to White Knuckle in and of itself, you're new to the team. And probably people aren't used to hearing your name or seeing your stuff online. So welcome, first of all, and thanks for joining the team. I know you didn't have the year that you wanted to. We won't say whether you got anything or not. I'll leave that up to you. But how did your year go?
Overall, it was a fun year, and it was a good learning year, I guess, is what I'll say. Didn't end up killing the buck that I wanted, but I spent a lot of time in a tree and got to film some cool stuff, and you can't really ask for a whole lot better than that. So,
well, anytime you're out there and a plan at least partly comes together, it's certainly rewarding. When you say you didn't kill the one you wanted, was there a specific deer or more than a specific deer that you were targeting?
Yeah, there was one that I kind of had my heart set on. I've been following him, I think since 2011. He was an old ancient deer. I've followed him closely, had a bunch of encounters with him over the years, starting when he was, I think, a yearling. I think my years, I'm trying to figure out when it was exactly I first saw him, but I know for sure this year he was 8.5. Ended up passing him as a 2-year-old, multiple encounters as a 3-year-old, multiple encounters as a 4-year-old. 5-year-old year is the only year I ever actually had him in bow range. And unfortunately, both of my buck tags were filled at that point. So I had to just watch him walk by. But then, that kind of lit the fire to definitely try to get him killed as a 6-year-old. And then, of course, I didn't see him on the hoof as a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old. So this year I'd kind of hinged my season around trying to get that deer tagged, and had him all summer. I finally picked up a shed off of him last spring. So, that really lit the fire. I searched high and low and never found a shed off of him, but finally found one. But went into the season, had pictures of them all summer, had pictures of them all the way up through September 14th, and the Indiana Deer Reduction Zone, Urban Zone, whatever you want to call it, opened on the 15th of September. And, of course, he disappeared on the 14th. And then I didn't have another picture of him until, I think, the 25th of October, which was very, very strange for him. He was a kind of a once a week, 2 or 3 times a week kind of buck, and then he just kind of went MIA for over a month. And then I got one random picture of him about a mile away on a different piece that I usually don't get him, and then that was it. So I have no idea where he went, if he got shot, if he got hit by a car. It's a fairly urban environment, or if he just died of old age somewhere. Shed season may tell me I may be able to find him if he died of natural causes, but otherwise, I don't have any idea what happened to him. So that kind of threw a whole loop for the entire season for me, to be honest. But that's just how deer hunting goes, I suppose.
Yeah, when you don't manage the land yourself, you manage it to the extent that you can manage it, but when you're not having complete control over it, it becomes a whole nother element. And that's one of the things that, it seems like we talk about over and over again. Everyone's got different situations that either make their situation easier in some respects and harder in others. And I can see where in your position that made it a little bit harder. So you have no idea whether this deer's alive.
I don't, and to be honest, just knowing his history, I mean, I've got 7 years of history, however long that is, I don't know, but I've had 7 years of history, and I just had a gut feeling after not getting him for a couple weeks in September. And then, I finally had that one picture that kind of gave me hope in late October. And then I know for sure I would have had him again on camera, I would think, by now. He was a buck that, for I think 2 or 3 years, he was one that wouldn't show until like the middle of November, and then I'd have him all the time through the end of the season. But he was kind of a late season buck, and as he got older, he became a little bit more of a homebody, and luckily his home shrunk down to about where I was hunting, because I'm hunting kind of broken up small pieces amongst houses and businesses, and he was living right there. So, fairly close. The most he was ranging was probably a mile, is my guess. But I know there are other hunters in that neighborhood. Not too many, but I'm sure if he walked by somebody, he would have gotten shot. He was no giant. He never was. I think he was probably at best this year, he was probably mid 140s. A respectable deer, but just his age class was what was really getting me. So I'm thinking he's gone, but who knows? You just never know, I guess, until, if 2 or 3 years pass, I'm going to say he's for sure gone, but I'm kind of already moving on and trying to think of other deer. So that's where I'm at with him.
Once they hit that 5-year mark, they become a different animal. And I know that's kind of the caliber of deer that you set the bar at for the last few years, is it not?
I try. I've been tempted by deer that are 4. I tend to set my bar at 4 years old or better. I prefer 5 or older, but it just depends on the deer and the situation. If it's a perfect situation, of course I'm gonna try to let them go to 5, but especially there in that urban type environment that I'm hunting, if they can get to 4 and they're a really good deer, they're probably one that's going to be put on the hit list for me. But other places that, fewer hunters, more ground to hunt, I'm not afraid to think about letting them get to 5 before I start hunting them. That's my personal philosophy on that. But.
So how does hunting deer in an urban environment differ from hunting them in a non-urban environment? I guess, are your tactics the same? I have no idea other than, hunting a little bit where I used to live in the backyard, but I wouldn't call that urban at all because it was a relatively small town and I was hunting a huge marsh that butted up to it. You're in a big city with cops and stoplights and all that stuff. I realize you're probably not right in the metro area of the city, but what kind of challenges do you run into doing that?
It's different. I guess I didn't know what the differences were when I first started, but as I've done it more, I've hunted kind of the urban environment for, I think, 8 or 9 seasons now. And, it's different in that the deer, I don't know, in this area, it's very broken up cover. Like you'll have a lot of houses and then, at the back of the subdivision, you'll have a little bit of timber, or you'll have, I'm fairly close to like the edge of town and kind of, it's still very urban, but a mile or 2 miles away, there's some wide open ag fields. So I know that, deer will go out there and they'll do their deer thing. And, I'll have a lot of deer that as the temperatures drop and it gets cold and they're looking for thermal cover, they'll start moving into these little wood lots and places where I can start getting pictures of them. I've never really had great early season success where I am because a lot of the deer some are out there on the wide open ag fields, a mile or 2 away. But as the fall starts rolling and crops come out, they'll start sucking into these little pieces. But it still baffles me how some of these deer move through. I mean, you would look at a map and you get a picture of a deer in one place and you get a picture of them on a completely different place, a couple miles away. And you're looking at the map going, how in the world did he get there? Because he's having to cross, a 4-lane, another 4-lane. He's having to go through, literally walk through a subdivision. I mean, there's so many boundaries, but these deer in the urban environments just, I mean, they somehow survive and they do their thing. I mean, they're rutting and they're chasing, they're just being deer, but they are definitely, they're edgier. I feel like on average, they're an edgier kind of deer. But I do notice that you can get away with a little bit more human presence. I can check trail cameras more often. I don't have to quite be as careful about ground scent when I'm just in there scouting or messing around, because, I mean, at any one point, there's people walking the dogs out there and there's hikers and bikers and whatever. But when you're hunting and they feel like they're being hunted and they know it's just not normal human presence, that's when they start getting skittish real quick. So you have to be pretty careful hunting these little small pieces and be very mindful about in the field, your wind direction and your approach. That's a huge thing. But it's basically taking everything that you would take when you're hunting deer anywhere else, and you just have to be even more mindful about certain aspects, but others you can kind of let go just because of the environment that they're in. So that's my perspective on that.
So is that the only land that you're hunting, or do you have other stuff that you're hunting?
No, I've got other ground that's, more traditional deer hunting, at least for this neck of the woods. It's more ag ground, broken up small woodlots and fence rows. I don't hunt personally. I don't have any big, large tracts of, timber or anything. A lot of my stuff is smaller pieces. I mean, like literally as small as 2 or 3 acres, up to, I may have a 200-acre farm, but only 2 or 3 acres have a tunnable just because it's a waterway running right through the middle of the field with a couple trees on it. So it's been a good variety. I've hunted a lot of different stuff over the years, and hunting by permission, anybody knows that kind of just, the game is always changing, and it's rare that you're on a place for more than a handful of years just because properties switch hands, or the landowner wants to give his buddy permission or whatever. So, and I've hunted some great places over the years, but it's constantly morphing, which honestly has made me I feel like I'm not claiming to be an expert by any means, but I feel like it has helped my learning curve immensely by being able to hunt quite a few different flavors of properties, I guess. And so I have my preferences, but I've hunted quite a few different kinds.
So primarily in that part of the world, I guess from looking at it from the sky, so to speak, you don't have a lot of trees. David and I were riding into the ATA show, and we both looked at each other and said, "Where in the world can these guys hunt?" Now we were coming in from the west, and I don't know if you're any closer, any farther, but that said, that still's got to be a challenge because I don't know if there's as many deer in that kind of environment in terms of just an overall population as there are in Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, wherever. Are there less deer? Are there more deer just because there's less cover? I mean, there's got to be, but in relation to the cover, do you think it's relatively the same?
I mean, deer density per acres of cover, I would assume, is probably pretty close to anywhere else. But I mean, if you're hunting that wide open ag ground, I mean, like you're literally hunting a fence row in the middle of nowhere. I mean, you're lucky to see a deer or two on a hunt, like really lucky in some cases. But I mean, there are places where it's wide open all around for miles, but if you can get on a little oasis of cover, I mean, you're going to have all the deer within a couple miles in there, especially once it starts getting cold and they're looking for cover. But I mean, it's such a toss up what the numbers are going to be. It just, I mean, these deer are major roamers out here on the open country where I hunt, and my buddy, my cousin, Zach. I mean, we've got documented deer travel of like up to 10 miles. I mean, you can be hunting a deer literally. Okay, this year's a good example. I had one deer that I was hunting. It was late November, early December, I believe. And I was on that deer, at least pictures of him. And I was eventually, I thought, going to run into him. I'm still hunting up there. And then Zach got pictures of that deer like 6 miles away. And I thought, well, there goes that plan. So, I mean, you just never know. These deer move. So trying to pin one down in that kind of environment is just difficult. It's just really how much seat time you can put in, and just try to put yourself in a position to see deer and see the deer that you're looking for. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's fun.
So what would you say your style of hunting is? First of all, before you answer that, let's talk about the question that I know the answer to. And what is it that gives you a distinct disadvantage over most of the other folks on our team?
What gives me the biggest disadvantage? I would say probably my traditional gear. I picked up the recurve for this past year, and I tried not to look at it as a handicap. I tried to look at it as I was just shortening my game a little bit, but I don't feel like I missed any opportunities this year, other than one. But outside of that, yeah, if it wasn't challenging enough, deer hunting, picking up a trad bow is just adding a whole different level of difficulty. So I don't know if that was a smart decision or a good decision, but I enjoyed it for this past season. I'm going to continue doing it. So.
Well, it's definitely noble of you to up your game in terms of one more hurdle to overcome, as though it's not enough to self-film, then self-film a 4-year-old or better, and then self-film a 4-year-old or better with traditional gear. I don't know how many guys do that or gals do that, but I can't imagine it's too terrible many. So you definitely have stacked the cards against you. But getting back to my original question, what take us, from say that September 15th opener through the end of the year. What's your style like?
Overall, like if I just had to put a definition on overall style, I'm very mobile. I really, really enjoy hanging hunts with my lone wolf. Like if I couldn't do that, I think a lot of my enjoyment of deer hunting would probably go downhill. Which it's kind of necessary. It's not just something I enjoy doing. It's something I have to do pretty much, because I'm not hunting a ton of ground. Like if you look at it by acreage, but I'm really spread out. I'm hunting 3 different counties and, multiple pieces in each county. And, some of them can be, 5 miles from each other, but I'm still kind of hunting the same deer. So it's just being mobile is a big part of it. But September through the end of the year, it kind of just morphs. What I like to do, I do not like to waste hunts, but I also don't like to, I like to hunt, obviously, but I don't want to waste a hunt by hunting somewhere where I'm not going to have a chance to kill. So a lot of my strategy revolves around placing a bunch of cameras out and just kind of, I guess, taking a general census of what's going on in each piece or each neighborhood. And obviously September 15th through October 1st. October 1st is the regular archery opener, but for that 2 weeks, I'm hunting urban. So, I'm kind of limited to where I can hunt there. But you have to kill a doe before you can kill a buck in the urban zone or deer reduction zone, whatever you want to call it. But So that first couple of weeks usually spent doe hunting. And then once October 1st rolls around, I'm really just checking cameras, and I'm not pounding the ground too much. I'm just checking cameras, putting them in easy places to get to. And I'll spend more time checking cameras and doing non-intrusive scouting, I guess what you'd say, over actually hunting. But I mean, you'll see that in the film from this year. I mean, I spent a good majority of October looking for deer. I was having trouble getting shooters on camera that I knew should be showing. That one deer that I told you about, I mean, he was one of them I was trying to find, and I was just having no success. But I had other deer that I knew should be showing up after that fall shift from summer range, and they just weren't showing. So I was just moving the cameras around a lot, checking them a lot. But once you get to rut, I mean, you got traditional places that if you've been hunting a place for a few years, you kind of just know you need to be in a tree in this area. Even if you're going in blind, you got a good chance of a roaming buck. And that's kind of how my season ended up going. I don't really think I had one shooter late October that I felt like I had a chance at. Actually, I take that back, two of them. I had an encounter with one of them, got some good footage of them. And I had him like 5 yards outside of bow range, and I just couldn't get a shot. And then I think that same week I had a different buck in an urban environment that he was showing up quite regularly. And I went in, tried to kill him, and didn't end up getting him before he disappeared. And then I got to rut, and I think I had a couple really good hunts in early November, passed some decent deer. And then I love to stay mobile during the rut. I mean, that's a big part of it, is just packing in the lone wolf and hanging in different places where you know that you can catch movement. But had another really nice buck. Probably, I'd say it was an easy low 160s that I started picking up for like a day or two. And I moved in on him in a little tiny wood lot and ended up having him pretty close one night chasing does, but been able to get him killed, and then he ended up getting killed by a gun hunter, which was kind of the story of the season. And then late season,
I'd say it's really the story of the season. You guys have taken a punch in the guts more than once this year.
Multiple times. Like even just recently, I had one of my really good up and coming 3-year-olds who got shot late November by a he's actually a buddy. He's a guy that I shared ground with. He got shot, and I was bummed for him, but he lost the deer, and that deer ended up showing up later. And he looked healthy up until we started getting some super brutal cold temperatures late December, and then I think his injuries started taking a toll. He shed around Christmas, and then he was looking pretty bad. I ended up actually seeing him while I was checking cameras early January. I got within 10 yards of him, and I doubt he's even still living right now. So chalk that one up as another one that bit the dust. I think I bet between Zach and me, we had pushing 10 different bucks that got killed out from under us. So it was brutal. So going into late season, I mean, my options were low, and I don't have any great hunting permission. I don't really have a whole lot of ground that I can be putting in some good food plots and have really great destination food sources for late season. So it was just a matter of, once again, kind of like the early season, just checking cameras and seeing where the deer are at least spending a part of their time. And I think, I mean, I got close to some, never ended up seeing any. I was close based on trail camera, but it was a very mediocre late season. But I mean, late season can be good or it can be really bad. Just depends on the year for me. But I think this coming year, I finally found a landowner who's going to let me put in some food plots and hopefully have a better late season. Hopefully it doesn't come down to late season. Hopefully I'm tagged out before then. But late season's always a toss-up. I've had some great encounters in December and January, but I've had some very, very, very slow late seasons. So nothing consistent for me, but overall, I really enjoy being mobile, checking cameras, and just kind of striking while the iron's hot. So that's what I enjoy doing the most.
Keeping mobile.
Mm-hmm.
You also are quite the I don't even know what to call you. You like to play with gear a lot. Tell us
Mhm.
tell us what you've modified over the years, what you've really had a lot of luck with. Any tips that you might have for anybody that's listening in terms of what you may have done with your fourth arrow camera arm, your bow, your release, your lone wolf, your sticks, your whatever.
It's well, you've talked to the man, the myth, the legend, Garrett Prawl from DIY Sportsman. He is a huge inspiration for a lot of the ideas I have. But I've kind of even taken his tweaks and tweaked them a little bit more to fit my style. But a lot of my gear mods end up revolving around silence. Like some people are like scent junkies, some are no movement in the tree. Mine is like sound. Like I hate metal on metal contact sounds when I'm trying to do hanging hunts, and I hate any kind of noise when I'm up in a tree. So a lot of my mods revolve around making it a quieter, faster setup without having to be super careful about letting your buckle hit the stand or letting your, I guess, just anything. So I've one of the biggest things I've done is I only hunt with one lone wolf stand, and I get away with that by I'll prep a lot of trees in the summer with screw and steps or with sticks or whatever. And so even if I'm not technically doing a run and gun, like I'm still packing the stand, and I'll climb up that tree and hang that stand real quick. I mean, it only adds an extra 20 to 30 seconds on setup. But I know that I can hunt out of the same stand all year, so I've really modified that one stand to where it fits my style really well. And I mean, I've wrapped the grid of the platform entirely with a thick layer of hockey tape, the upright, the seat. I've taken the buckles, and I know a lot of people that try to silence their buckles use bicycle tubing, and I've tried that before. Not a huge fan of it, especially if you get into temperatures that are less than freezing, because that bicycle inner tube rubber just gets stiff, and it can actually be even squeakier than, more annoying than metal on metal contact. It's bad. For me it was anyway. So I went with, it's called yak grips. They're a tube of neoprene that are used for putting over like the grips on your kayak paddle. But I take it and I'll cut about a 4-inch section, just slide it over the cam buckle on my lone wolf, and you have to cut a slit in the back for the strap to go through. But that's super silent, even when I was hanging hunting this year when it was, I think less than 0. So it was silent the entire season. I tried it out last season too, but this year was a true test, and it was awesome because, you can literally bang your buckle against the platform of the stand, and if you got hockey tape on the platform and you got the buckle in that neoprene sleeve, it's dead silent. It's awesome, but it also doesn't have the safety issue of when that bicycle tire inner tube gets stiff. It can start kind of pushing on your or the release for the cam buckle. So I feel like I've actually had it slip a little bit before too, which is obviously not safe. So safety is definitely number one on the mods, but anything that'll silence it. And then the other big thing was I bought a fourth arrow camera arm, the carbon arm, last year when I joined White Knuckle and just started playing around with camera gear. And I was very happy with it. It's a very silent setup anyway, but I'm never happy with anything the way you buy it. So I had to figure out a way to make it more silent, more compact, easier for me to use on teardowns, because I wasn't going to leave a whole lot of bases and trees. That's part of being mobile. So I know they sell a run and gun base now, but I kind of made my own out of just the regular shoulder and base with the fourth arrow arm. And I think Garrett's got a little bit on that on the DIY Sportsman channel on how to do that, but basically just kind of flipping the base and the shoulder around to make it more compact. And then I use Plastidip a lot on metal parts, and I Plastidip the whole I don't know what you call it, the base. I plastic dip that, and I'll use rubber, like rubberized undercoating for vehicles. I'll use that too. Obviously, my tip is do it way before you think about using out the woods.
I was just going to say,
leave it out.
Did you say undercoating?
Yeah, rubberized undercoating, which does a really good job. It's durable, and it doesn't eliminate sound, but it'll tone that loud tink of metal down a little bit, and lower that down by a few decibels. But it's nasty smelling. So I mean, I did that mod. I think I did that last March, and I think the smell was finally gone by August. But it was much needed. Did that, and then I took the silver, because the shoulder is usually a bright silver color, which is probably fine, but for me it wasn't. So I took some flat spray paint and spray painted it just a tan color, just to knock the sheen off of it. And I've got the arm wrapped in hockey tape, and I'm kind of a hockey tape junkie, which I will say it does add fabric. I mean, this goes for the stand too. I mean, it adds fabric that's going to hold scent. So you do have to be mindful of where you put it, where you're storing your gear. And definitely...
real quick, if I can interrupt, just because I thought, and I'm not a hockey player, but I was under the assumption, after talking to you shortly after we had our school, I was under the assumption that hockey tape was no different than athletic tape. Come to find out, it's a completely different ball game, really, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. And it's, I'm trying to think who I first saw did the modifications. I think his name is Jim Hole. He's a guide up in, I believe it's in Canada somewhere. But he's got a video on YouTube somewhere floating around that I found that he had taken everything to the next level. And I mean, he wrapped his sticks, he wrapped his carabiners, he wrapped absolutely everything in hockey tape. And I thought, well, I mean, that's a good idea, because it is definitely different than athletic tape. I mean, I'll buy a big bundle of the 1 inch wide or 3/4 inch wide hockey tape, and it takes a lot of layering to get it thick enough to where it's really going to deaden your sound. But once you get a good thick layer on there, I mean, to do a platform for a lone wolf, I mean, it was a full afternoon project. It was hours of monotony, but and it's held up pretty well. I think I did that maybe 3 seasons ago, and it's just now starting to wear through a little bit on the top of the platform. But it's held up well, but it's definitely, like I said, it's something that you need to be very mindful about, scent control. So I'm storing it away from, I'm keeping it in my basement, but I'm keeping it away from any kind of smells that it's going to pick up. And then I'll treat it every so often with ozone. I'll put it in my cabinet and treat it with my Ozonics, which helps. It definitely mitigates some smell. But it's, to me, running an Ozonics in the field is, I mean, it's kind of insurance on that, but I would almost rather have silence on my setup and not have to worry about incidental noise while I'm setting up, over the disadvantage of it maybe grabbing a little bit more smell and having to treat it, X number of times during the season, depending on how much I'm hunting. But it's something that, I mean, it's annoying, the amount of hockey tape I've had to go through, but I mean, I will wrap absolutely everything. I mean, like I said, carabiners, stick, stand, my camera arm, my bow hook. I mean, everything. I don't think there's any bit of bare metal on any of my setup anywhere, but I will say I wish I had not gone with full black, because it does end up kind of blobbing, making your stand, because I'll use just black hockey tape, but I think next time I would go with maybe something, I would almost even rather go with white and black, because you hang your stand up there and you back up a little bit. It does blob a little bit more than just bare metal of a lone wolf. But once again, I think that's just a disadvantage that I'm willing to deal with at this point.
Why not dip it all in the rubberized dip? I mean, obviously the bucket isn't big enough, but or treat it with or go to Napa and get a bed liner spray.
And you can do that, and I think guys have done that. I've read on the forums before people have taken, and used full cans of rubberized undercoating, which they said does deaden the sound a little bit, but it actually adds a lot of weight too. Hockey tape, I bet I only added, I hate to even guess, but I probably only added a few ounces to my stand by wrapping the whole thing. But if I guarantee you, if you plastic dipped or if you rubberize that platform, I mean, you're going to add a pound at least. Is my guess. I don't honestly know, but that was the factor that went into it. Was it's such a lightweight option, and it would be easier to touch up if you're doing rubberized undercoating, because if it starts to flake or peel somewhere, you could just spritz it with the rubberized undercoating and just keep moving. But once again, it's kind of weight shavings too. That's the other thing that I'm always trying to do, is I'm trying to cut down on pack weight, because like I said, I'm taking my stand with me every single time. So efficiency and packing my gear is big, and silence on packing is big too. Like I've got a fleece pack that I'll use that I know is silent, and I've even cut out. There was like a waterproof liner in the lid, and I've cut out a lot of it just because I hate noise. And I'll set that on my back, and it's got all my stuff in it, and it's silent. But then I can put my stand over my pack on my back, and the fleece against the hockey tape on the stand. I mean, I can move around and try to dodge through brush and stuff, and I'm not making any noise. And that's another side note I was going to mention, was by wrapping the platform on your stand with hockey tape, I noticed a huge reduction in noise when I was like ducking through honeysuckle. That's a big thing while I'm hunting, is we've got a lot of invasive honeysuckle. And it's like, if you're walking through and you got a stand and sticks on your back, anybody that does that knows what that sound of branches scratching against your metal stand sounds like. And to me, that is not a very natural sound. So deadening it by wrapping all your gear with hockey tape, I mean, I've noticed it just on my walks in that it's a lot quieter if I'm having to bust through brush. So just another little advantage of taking precautions on wrapping all your gear and spending all that time trying to modify all your equipment to get it silent.
Well, it sounds like you spend a considerable amount of time making sure that it's silent. Do you feel like that pays dividends in the long run for you?
I would think so. I mean, I know people do it without having all their gear modded, but I mean, there have been multiple times where I've been halfway up a tree and I can see a deer bedded 20 to 50 yards away, that I know if I make a sound, that deer's going to be on me quick. Actually, this past season, I was setting up. It was a good example. I was setting up and I was halfway up the tree, and I looked out and there's a whole herd of deer. I couldn't see. I was in the honeysuckle brush, and I got probably about 15. I wasn't even that high. I was probably about 10 feet off the ground. I finally could kind of see over the brush out into the field, and I had a whole herd of deer, and they were less than 100 yards. Not a single one of them picked me off from sound. And I mean, being silent is a huge part, especially when you're hunting small pieces and you know the deer are bedded close. I mean, you just can't get away with any kind of sound. And of course, a lone wolf's quiet as it is, as far as you're not going to get squeaks and pops like you would with a welded stand. But just having the insurance on incidental, metal on metal noise is huge when you're setting up, especially, like I said, in close range deer bedding areas, in small woodlots where the deer may only be 100 yards away. So to me, I can't quantitatively say, what advantage it's given me, but I feel like it's given me an advantage, especially when I'm hunting close to deer, or setting up close to deer. So.
Okay, it's the, like you said, it's hard to quantify how much it does or doesn't affect them when you can't see them. We talked about that earlier today on another podcast. You might think you get in without bumping deer, but there's a significant chance that if you're dancing on the edge, so to speak, you're more than likely gonna spook them. And any precaution you can take, and it sounds like that's what you're after, is taking all those precautions. The better off you are.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
anything you don't mod your Ozonics at all, do you?
On my old unit, I think I had it wrapped with hockey tape also. I know they make a neoprene sleeve that goes over it, which I will probably end up getting this year. What I do for storage, though, the pack that I use is it's basically just kind of an open bucket. I mean, there's some small pockets inside, but if I have something that's going to be making noise against other stuff, like I'll put my camera arm base and my fleece sock cap, and then I'll put my Ozonics in my neck gaiter, my face mask, and I always store it that way. And then, I'll wrap the mount that I put into the tree, the screw-in mount. I'll wrap that with hockey tape. But outside of that, there's no modifications needed on that for me.
Okay, good to hear. Let's talk about that. And I know we're getting close to running out of time here, but let's talk about. Since you are such a gear nut and a guy that loves to tinker with that kind of stuff, I would imagine that your process in getting to the stand, getting up the stand, take us through the process of if you were going to hang and hunt, how do you go about doing that? What sequence of events happens? What precautions do you take? What special things do you do that maybe could be of use to someone else?
As dorky as it sounds, I have spent quite a few hours in the summer. Like, I'll take a whole afternoon and I'll just go climb trees all around the yard, and that has taught me a lot. And I know that.
Do your neighbors look funny at you?
I have gotten some really weird looks, but to me, I mean, just being able to practice doing it is huge. I mean, if you go through a whole season, I think this season I sat maybe, I don't know, ballpark, maybe I sat 60 times. And of those 60 times, I bet I did a hang and hunt, like a full hang and hunt, probably 45 times. So, I mean, you do it that many times, you're going to get efficient at doing it, especially if you do it multiple seasons. But my method is I prefer, it starts kind of with how I pack my stuff. I've got my pack that has, my camera arm, my bow hook, my pull-up rope, absolutely everything I need for the hunt, basically, inside of it. And then I'll have that on my back. And then for my lone wolf and sticks, I hunt with the assault platform, and I'll take that, and then I have 4 sticks that I will lay flat. I will go ahead and I'll use the provided buckle, and I'll strap the 4 sticks together. And then I take those 4 and I'll lay them down flat on the stand. And I think the top V brackets kind of nestle right against the base of the upright. And if you look at the stand, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. But it sits right there, and the bottom of the sticks end up about even with the bottom of the seat, or with the front of the seat, I guess. And then I'll take 2 bungee cords and run them crisscross across the stand. And like I said, everything's wrapped, so if there's a little bit of shifting, there's zero noise anyway. But the bungee cords have been a big help. And you just, strap them across there. And then if you have a bulky outer layer, it's really easy to just throw it across the sticks before you bungee cord, and that also helps it to be silent. But and like I said, I'll put my pack on my back, and then my standing sticks, and I'll drop it down over my head and slip my arms through the really loose shoulder straps on the stand. And then I'll walk in, and then when I pick out a tree, all I've got in my hands is my wicked saw and my bow, and I'll just sit those down to the side and go ahead and hook up a pull-up rope that I can just grab right off the side of my pack, and without having to take it off, and I'll tie it onto the bow and put the other end on my harness. And then I'll slip the stand off my back and just take the sticks off quietly, lean them against the tree, take them apart, and then I'll slide the stand back over my back over the pack again, and then I'll hang the bottom stick, and then I'll slide up, 1 or 2 steps and hang the second stick, and then I've got little paracord loops that I've got tied near my lineman's belt connections on my lineal harness, and I can drop the V brackets into those paracord loops. And if you're looking, I mean, Garrett has another video on how to do that. He's using the mini sticks in the video, I think, which I've used as the 4-2, but it also works well for the full length sticks. At least for my height, I can put them on my hips and the sticks aren't bottoming out on the ground. But then I'll go ahead and hook my lineman's belt up, and then I'll climb up to that second stick and hang the second or the third or fourth stick from off my hip. And then it's just a matter of to keep my upright flat against my platform, I use just the top cam buckle strap that comes with a stand, and I'll leave it on the Versa button, wrap it around the platform and back onto the offset bracket on the upright, and then cinch it tight. And then I keep the second strap in an accessible pocket on my pack. And so I'll just take that stand up my back, loosen that strap and undo it, throw it around the tree and hang it kind of loose. Then I'll reach in and I'll grab that second strap in my pack real quick and throw it on the bottom Versa button and cinch everything level. And then it's just a matter of stepping in and starting the 5 to 10 minute process to get all the camera gear set up and your bow pulled up. And if you have any trimming on a run and gun, I mean, at that point, you can pull up your saw or climb down, and you kind of know your shooting lanes by that point. You can do some saw work from the ground before you move your pull saw up to trim out up there. But
do you try to get everything up in one climb?
Yeah, it's rare that I'll have to go back down for a second load. There are some trees where I've had to. It just kind of depends. And I always, another tip that I have is I've hunted some places where the only tree that I had available was a tree that was going to be just a hair too big for my straps. And Lone Wolf has extension straps that you can purchase that adds maybe, I don't even know what it is, probably 2 to 3 extra feet. So you can get around those larger diameter trees, which has been a big help. In a pinch, I've taken like an extra cam buckle strap and just done a little loop through one end just to lengthen and use 2 full length straps. But that's a big part of it, is just being prepared, being able to get set up efficiently and quietly. But
agreed. That's one thing that I learned this year after having hunted the same place for 20 some years, and I've said that over and over again. I realized that walking 2 miles back into the timber and forgetting whatever wasn't cool. So I realized really early on, for anybody that's thinking about doing this kind of run and gun hunting, is you've got to have a system. Once you agree, it's absolutely paramount that you have a system, because it's just like with anything, it's there's really no muscle memory involved in it. But if you just do it the same way every time, the chances of you screwing something up are much lower than they would be if you're doing something different every time. And then it sounds like you're taking just a ton of precautions that allow you to maybe make some mistakes and rub your, or hit a cam buckle on the stand, etc. And those little tiny things, especially when you're hunting public like I do, or when you're hunting those urban deer, I would imagine where you're at, that can make all the difference.
For sure. It's definitely another important thing is I know some people that aren't quite, I guess, as anal about it as I am, but like everything, I'm not like this in all aspects of life, but when it comes to running gun hunting, I am. Everything has to have a place. Like I know where absolutely every little piece of gear is in my pack, and exactly how everything goes together when I'm packing up my stand or my pack or whatever. So down to like when I was hunting with a compound, you have to have an extra release and such a pocket, and like I'll carry extras of some things as long as it's not weighing me down, and I know where everything is, because when you're setting up in the dark, which I like to do a lot, I mean you're setting up blind pretty much, so you need to know where everything is and just be able to basically feel your way through the process. So I mean, with practice and doing it enough, you get efficient at it. You learn what's going to work for you and what's not going to work. But, I mean, listening to people like Garrett, and, I mean, there's plenty of stuff on forums on the web, on the internet now that, I mean, people just have great ideas for efficient methods and quiet methods of how to do things. And so, I mean, that'll really shorten your learning curve. You don't have to make a bunch of mistakes that other people have made if you can just pay attention to what people are telling you. So that's been a big part of my my run and gun and my general hunting setups over the years. Is just trying to learn from others and not make the same mistakes others have too.
Any final thoughts? And then I'm going to run through a bunch of intrusive questions. No, I can't think of any. It's just been, I don't know, it's been a good year, and you can always take something away from a hunting season, whether that's good or bad. And you just gotta keep learning. It's an ever evolving game. Right. It definitely is. So we're gonna go through throughout the year here, each team member, or we're gonna try at least to get each team member to participate in one podcast. So thanks for being our guinea pig. I guess I've got a couple questions so we can get to know Ben Massey a little bit better. Married or single?
Married.
Kids? No kids.
Yep, got 3 little boys.
3 little boys. Going to be hunters?
Yeah, I hope so. And if they are going to be, I'm going to need to find some more ground.
Anybody listening in Indiana, Ben could probably use some help with some more ground. He probably would need a couple years to learn it, maybe like 10 years would be good to learn it before they're ready to go, right?
Exactly. Amen.
What do you do for a living?
I am self-employed. I do lawn care business. Started that up last year, which primary reason was just, be able to spend more time with my family and kids. But a good side benefit is there's not a whole lot of mowing goes on once you get past late October. So, I mean, it's a side benefit that I'm willing to take. So it's been good. Like I said, this is only the second season going into it, but it's worked really well for family schedule and for trying to be an avid deer hunter. So it's been good.
What do you like to do outside of hunting?
Shed hunting and anything else revolving around deer. Kind of a one-track mind, to be honest. I'll go fishing every once in a while. I used to really enjoy tournament bass fishing and was really big into that. But, I mean, I've kind of got one focus anymore. I do enjoy shooting my bow with my kids, and that keeps me closer to home, and I can hang out with the family and still enjoy archery, which that's kind of another part of traditional archery is I've just had, it requires a lot more practice. So it's something that I can do at home every evening with the kids after we're done with work. And so I guess that's kind of a big hobby for me, is just shooting my bow out in the backyard. As boring as that may sound to some people, that's what I enjoy doing.
No, it doesn't sound boring at all. That's I would imagine with traditional gear, it requires a significant amount of practice in relationship to what a compound would be. I'm guessing it's quite a bit more, or no?
It is, because a lot of your fail-safes with a compound are gone and they're put on you, from consistent draw length and anchor point to a clean release with your fingers to not having a sight. I'm using I'm using my arrow tip for my sight, which sounds ridiculous, but I used to shoot instinctive with traditional equipment, but through listening to some podcasts and talking to people, I've become a little bit better about actually taking dedicated aiming without a sight, which sounds just weird as a compound hunter for years, but it's worked well. And it definitely just takes a lot of practice just to develop the muscle memory that your body needs to be able to have those awkward positions in a tree, but still be able to find your anchor and consistent draw length. Because if you're an inch or two, if you're a half an inch off on your draw length when you're shooting, I mean, those arrows are going so slow, it's going to make a major impact on your impact point. So yeah, practice is pretty big. So
I can imagine. Any other final thoughts before we close out the show here?
Not really. I've really enjoyed my ride with White Knuckle so far. I'm looking forward to getting my footage out there for people to see, and hope you can enjoy it. And I'm not going to say you're going to learn anything because I'm no expert, but it's fun all the same. So I've enjoyed it and continue to look forward to what's going on.
Well, there you have it, my interview with Mr. Ben Massey. Thanks, Ben, for taking time out of your schedule to tell us all about you. With that, I think I'll close out the show for today. Before I let you go, though, not to sound redundant, I need your reviews on iTunes. We're up to 30-some reviews, which is great. We've been doing this a year, so we'd love to have more. If you can give us a 5, that would be great. If you can't, just give us some feedback and let us know what more we can bring to you. Next week, we will have Mr. Lee Lukoski on the show, and that'll be a 2-part show because getting him and Todd together is... well, let's just say we recorded a lot for a long time. So it was a fun time. We learned a lot. I learned a lot, at least. I don't think I said 50 words, but nevertheless, Lee will be on next week and the week after. And we've got so many great interviews coming up. You guys are going to love what we've got to bring. So with that, I'll close out the show for the week. Thanks again for listening to the White Knuckle Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors. Thanks again to Ozonics for making this possible. Don't forget that Ozonics has that sale going on still on the HR 200 and the HR 300. So with that, peace out.